Hello, and welcome to the Advocate Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christy Love, inviting you into this space as we amplify voices, challenge inequitable systems, and put children first in every conversation. Today, we have a very special guest with us, the beautiful and talented Dr. Yanique Rolingson. It is truly an honor to have her here. Allow me to share a bit about her. Dr. Rolingson is an educator and author who is deeply committed to strengthening literacy, confidence, and purpose in both students and educators alike. Originally from Jamaica, she brings nearly 2 decades of experience in education, beginning her career in New Jersey and later serving as an educator and instructional coach in Decatur and Madison County, Alabama. In 2025, Dr. Rolingson made a bold transition from school-based education to launch SNAP Academy, a nonprofit academic coaching program grounded in her belief that meaningful learning happens when students think deeply and families are genuine partners in the educational process. The SNAP, Stop, Notice, Act, Plan approach focuses on building strong reading and writing foundations while also nurturing student confidence and resilience. That same year, she became a published author with the release of A Lamp to Their Path, guiding teachers to reconnect with their calling, a reflective, purpose-centered book designed to help educators remember why they entered the profession and reignite their passion for impact. Dr. Rollinson's work is rooted in intentional, people-centered support, uplifting educators, empowering families, and investing in students so they grow into thoughtful learners and confident thinkers. Help me welcome Dr. Yanique Rolingson to the Advocate Podcast.
Hey. Oh,
Hello,
wow, what an
hello.
introduction. Hello. How are you?
I am so great. I'm so glad that you're joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I've been anticipating it actually.
Yes. For my viewers, this is my sister from another mister, and we'll discuss that a little later. But for the listeners who are meeting you for the first time, who is Dr. Yanique Rolingson beyond the titles and credentials?
Oh my, that is a good question because the titles really aren't the heart of it. At my core, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and first and foremost, I am a child of God. Everything else flows from that. Like you said, I'm originally from Jamaica. I came to the United States when I was about 12, and that move shaped me in ways I didn't fully understand until much, much later. I was raised in a single parent household, and I watched my mom work 2 jobs just to make sure my brother and I had what we needed. She didn't complain. She just did what she had to do to get things done, right?
Mhm.
But what really stuck with me wasn't just her work ethic, it was her expectation. She was always pushing us to be better, to think beyond our circumstances, and to believe that where we started didn't have to be where we would end. And I knew early on that I wanted to be more than survival. I wanted purpose. I wanted stability. I wanted a life where calling mattered.
Mhm.
So when people hear Dr. Rollinson or author or educator, that's fine. But underneath all of that is a girl who watched sacrifice up close, listened to resilience early, and grew up believing that faith, discipline, and education would say yes to doors that once felt closed. So yeah, that's really who I am.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can say the same thing about my mom. These moms are powerful and strong examples for us and a
Yeah.
foundation for our success. I love you, Mama.
I love you, mom. Yeah.
So, can you share a bit about your journey in education and the work that led you to write this book?
Um, my journey in education actually started from a place of struggle, not certainty, right? When I first came to the United States, I had a really hard time adjusting, and I hated the way I spoke. My accent felt like something I needed to fix, especially when people made fun of it. So I did what a lot of kids do. I muted myself. I stopped raising my hand. I stopped sharing my thoughts, and I just tried to blend in. And I guess that's why I'm always encouraging teachers to build relationships first, because there's so many things kids are dealing with that have nothing to do with what's on the board, right?
Mhm.
I remember there were times when our refrigerator was empty. There were times when my mom would give us her last and go without. I remember hearing her crying at night. And most days I came to school not thinking about education. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about dinner. I was
Mhm.
thinking about, are the lights going to stay on this month? Is my mom going to be able to pay the light bill? So when I look at a student now, I'm always thinking, what are they carrying that I can't see? In high school, I had a teacher who saw me before I could even see myself. She helped me rediscover my voice. She wasn't just an English teacher, she became a second mom. She helped me apply to college. She encouraged me to aim higher than I thought I possibly could, and then she even pushed me to study abroad. Right,
Mhm.
and that experience changed everything. It shifted how I saw the world, how I saw myself, and what I believed was possible. And what's funny is, I didn't originally plan to be a teacher. I wanted to be a writer. I had dreams of writing for Essence magazine.
It's not too
you
late.
know,
It's not too late.
right? But my husband would always say, you have a way with children, you see them. And over time, I realized he was right. And teaching became the place where my love for words and storytelling and people came together. And this book really grew out of encounters with teachers, but also out of the belief that one adult, just one moment, one act of encouragement can reroute an entire life,
Mhm.
and I live that. I watched it happen to me, and I've seen it happen for students over and over again, you know.
Yes, the same thing happened to me, and it wasn't a teacher. I would say it was a former boss when I was in college, Letha Daniel. And she was like, Christy, you're going to speak at this engagement. And I was like, me? Public speaking? Like, who, me? The same girl that cried during my Easter speech? What, who? But it was her belief in me and pushing me to go beyond what I thought I could do that has me where I am today. So that adult that sees you
Yeah.
and encourages you in your talent, and
Mhm.
that is priceless.
Of course.
Mhm.
We
So
always have that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what personal experiences shaped your perspective on teaching?
Um, Honestly, my perspective on teaching was shaped long before I ever stepped into a classroom. So, as a student, I learned what it feels like to be unseen, coming to this country and struggling with my accent, you know, um, trying to figure out where I fit. I know what it is like to sit quietly with a lot going on inside of you. And at home, I saw resilience up close, right? Watching my mom work two jobs taught me discipline, sacrifice and the value of showing up even when it's hard. And that situation stayed with me. I also saw what it looks like when a parent is stretching $1 all
Mhm.
the way to the edge, right? My mom would put our clothes on layaway.
Yeah.
Some days she could afford to finish paying for them, and
Mhm.
other times we'd go back and the clothes will be back on the floor like it just never happened, right?
Mhm.
And so I understand what it feels like to want stability and not always have it. But the biggest influence was the teachers who didn't just teach content, they taught belief. The ones who paused long enough to notice me and who would ask me questions, who spoke life into me when I was shrinking. So when
Mhm.
I became a teacher, I carried all of that with me. I don't just see students as learners, I see them as whole people, kids with stories, pressure, and potential that may not be obvious at the first glance. And that's really shaped how I teach. I'm always asking questions. Who is this child beyond the desk? Because I saw firsthand how much one caring adult can change the direction of a life.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that in my teaching, we have the same perspective. That's why I had to have you
Mhm.
on my show.
Yeah.
But I reflect often on my childhood, on those things that hurt me and those
Mhm.
things that encouraged me. And I
Mhm.
try to avoid those things that hurt me. I try to
Mhm.
avoid that, to,
Mhm.
imposing that on children. And I
Mhm.
always try to um, practice those things that encouraged me. So
Yeah. It's
being,
important. Yeah.
mhm.
Mhm.
So this book, I'm going to call it a book at this point, but it's really more than just a book. And it doesn't feel like it was written from a desk, it feels lived. What experience in schools made you realize this book needed to exist?
Ooh, sis. So, there were a lot of moments in schools that made me realize this book needed to exist, but one in particular has never left me. I remember I was walking past a new teacher's classroom one day and I heard crying. And it wasn't a student crying, it was an adult crying.
Mm,
When I went in, she was curled up under her desk, overwhelmed and questioning whether she made the right choice.
mm,
And that, it hit me because it wasn't about classroom management or lesson plans. It was about identity, about calling, about someone who cared deeply but felt completely undone.
mm, mhm,
And then there was another moment I still think about. And when you and I came, we taught middle school. We came in the
mm,
same time, and in that particular year, and you remember, we had an ELA teacher and she started out the year on fire. Her
mhm.
classroom looked like a Pinterest. Everything was organized. She was excited to meet her students, but by January it was like the life in her had deflated.
Mhm,
And before the month was over, she left. She didn't even pack up her room. She left everything. And this wasn't a first year teacher. She had been in the system almost 5 years, right?
mhm,
And before I knew it, I was sitting in the principal's office with the curriculum director, being asked to take over her classroom in the middle of a school year. And I accepted because, I didn't want those students to lose valuable instructional time.
mhm,
I didn't want them to lose valuable instruction time. And that's why this book exists, because I didn't write it from theory. I wrote it from the hallways, the quiet conversations, and the moments when educators are barely holding it together. And it's also why I'm always reminding teachers, you're not alone,
mhm.
you shouldn't have to carry all of this in silence. their
Yes.
support, you know.
Yes. I don't know how often I hear, "Oh, you're a teacher? Oh, you're better than me," you know?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
will say, it's a calling, and you
Mhm.
frame teaching as a calling in your book. How does
Mhm.
reconnecting to that calling change the way educators respond to student behavior and discipline?
So when you reconnect to teaching as a calling, it shifts how you interpret behavior, right? So
Mhm.
instead of immediately asking, what's wrong with this student? You start asking what's going on with them. And that, right? That one question changes everything.
Yes.
And the reason I'm wired that way is because I always try to place myself in that student's shoes. I
Mm,
never forget what it felt like to walk in them, right? Even now as an adult.
mhm.
So I wasn't an easy kid, if I'm being honest. I wasn't the easiest of kid. I got into a few fights when I was in school, and it's hard to admit it, but I did. And it's not because I was a bad child, but because I felt like I was always defending myself. I always had to defend myself. I didn't have the best clothes. My accent was different. My mom worked 7 days a week and couldn't always make it to my trap meet. I felt,
Mhm.
for me, in that time, I felt like a misfit, right? So I was angry, and I was guarded, and I stayed ready, you know. So,
Mhm.
when I see students acting out, I don't automatically see attitude. Sometimes it's dumb. It's a survival mechanism. I
Mhm.
see survival. And now, let me say this, because teachers will tell you this all day long. A lot of teachers feel like they don't have the time or the manpower to do that deeper work. They're managing 25 to 30 students, and many of those kids have very different needs, academic gaps, trauma, behavior plans, language needs, and that's a lot for one person.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
get why teachers can feel like that. I'm barely surviving, right? But I'm
Mhm.
also trying, when they say, I'm barely surviving and I'm just trying to get through the day. But that's also why reconnecting to calling matters,
Mhm.
because when you're disconnected, usually from exhaustion, behavior starts to feel personal, right?
Mm, mm,
It feels
yes.
like disrespect, so the response becomes reactive.
Mhm.
And when you're grounded in your why, you still hold boundaries and expectation, but you respond with clarity instead of emotion. Discipline becomes corrective, not punitive, right? You start seeing behavior as communication. It's a signal, not just an interruption, but it's information, right?
Yes,
And,
yes.
I'll add this because it matters. Yes, it's important for students to see, people who look like them, because we're always hearing that. But
Mhm.
what matters the most is that the adult is willing to truly see the child
Mhm.
fully, honestly, and without bias, right? No matter who that child is or what they look like, that's where the real change starts, right? And this isn't about being soft. It's not about being effective. You can be firm and compassionate at the same time, and even when you don't have extra support, that mindset shift, changes your next move, your tone, your timing, the way you de-escalate, right? So you can protect the learning environment and still keep the student dignity intact. So,
Mm.
I was the best of the student, but I had issues that were going on. But one teacher, she had her own things going on, but she took the time to truly understand who I am. And look at me now,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely, absolutely. And I look at teaching as my calling, and I want to do everything in excellence unto God, you know?
Yes.
So I think about, how do I treat children according to my faith? How do I treat children
Mm-hmm.
according to how my creator wants me to, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I do want to get frustrated, I have to go back to, this is your calling, Christy. He
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
made you for this. You
Mm-hmm.
got
Mm-hmm.
this, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I
Yes.
would say too, you mention your faith, even those who don't believe in anything. I don't
Hmm.
care what you believe in, it's about humanity. And if you're in this profession, you're dealing with
Hmm.
people who cannot advocate for themselves, so you being that voice to speak up and notice and doing what's right, you
Hmm.
know. So I like the idea of, centering your faith around that. But for those who are in the system that do not have or do not believe in God, you know, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we're dealing with little people with feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be my next question, which was, how can people of other faiths or even other careers benefit from reading your book?
Yeah, that's something I'm really intentional about. While like you, my faith grounds me. This book isn't about preaching or trying to convert anyone. It's
Hmm.
about purpose. It's about reflection and the human side of care of the caring work,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Anyone who has ever felt called to serve, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a nurse, a leader, or someone in a completely different field, will recognize these moments: the doubt, the exhaustion, the quiet question of, does what I do actually matter? The stories in the book are rooted in schools, but the themes are universal. You got
Hmm.
identity, you got resilience, you got compassion, you got boundaries and meaning in the work. And for people of other faith or no fade at all, the heart of the book is still accessible, right? It
Hmm.
invites you to pause, to reflect, and reconnect with why you do what you do and
Hmm.
how you show up for others. So, at its core, it's about being human in
Hmm.
systems, right, that can sometimes forget our humanity.
Yeah.
So, whether you're in education or not, this book is really an invitation to slow down, reflect, and remember that purpose isn't tied to a title, it's
Hmm.
tied to how we care.
Yes. Yes. So, how do you suggest teachers use the book?
Um, I always tell, teachers have asked me, people have asked me this question before, and I'll tell teachers or anyone, there's no one right way to use the book. You
Hmm.
can read it straight through like a regular book, especially if you're in a season where you just need to feel seen and understood. But you can also use it differently, right? Because the stories are pulled from real situations teachers actually face. You can flip to the experiences that mirrors what you're dealing with in that moment,
Hmm.
whether it's burnout, discipline, doubt, or just feeling stuck.
Hmm.
The reflection questions are there on purpose. They're not busy work, and they're not there to tell teachers how to do or what to do. They're there to help teachers slow down, think honestly and arrive at their own solutions. This book isn't about fixing teachers. I say that all the time. Teachers are not broken, but it's about helping them to look at their situation from multiple angles,
Hmm.
emotionally, professionally, and personally, so they can respond with clarity instead of frustration. And, I see it as a companion, something you can come back to when you need perspective and not feeling pressured.
Yeah, yeah. So earlier I said we call it a book, but I'm going to call it a tool, right? I'm going to call it a tool. And I promise you, no matter when you open, at first I started reading it from cover to cover, and then I just started going to the table of contents and seeing what was all in it. And I promise you, there was something for whatever season I was in. Even
Yeah.
if, like now, I'm like at the best school and I'm so happy. But guess what I have to do? I have to encourage someone else. So
Yeah.
it tells me how to be a light to someone
Yeah.
else. You know what I'm saying? It encourages me to be a light to someone else when I'm loving my situation. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's not just about the tough, and it's also about the good that we have and
Mhm.
encouraging us to spread that light. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're loving it and it's
Yes.
resonating with you. Yeah.
Yes. So, as I said, she's my sister from another mister. We actually work together in Decatur City Schools. And one very important project we worked together on was the Check and Connect mentor group. So, I would like to discuss Check and Connect with you.
Yeah.
Why did you feel the need to start it, and do you feel it was effective?
Hmm. So, like I said before, Chrissy, we came into that school. We came in that school that same time, that same year, you and I, and Check and Connect started the way a lot of good ideas start. It's through frustration and a whole lot of love for our kids, right?
Mhm.
Um, like when you and I first got to that middle school, together, I remember thinking, okay, why does ISS feel like the hotel lobby?
Yeah.
People are checking in and they're checking out all day. It's like a revolving door, right?
Mhm.
Kids were constantly missing class. And what bothered me the most wasn't just the discipline piece, it was the academic piece, right?
Mhm.
Even if a student was great when they were with me, they
Mhm.
were still failing and falling behind because they literally weren't in the room you
Mhm.
know and the other thing I noticed was there wasn't a real plan for what happened when they came back. The consequence was over, but the support didn't start. It
Mhm.
was like, good luck, see you next time.
Mhm.
So when I came to you, because I was like, listen, I know you see what I'm saying, and you did. You were on board immediately, and we both went to our principal, and I'll give him credit as well. He had concerns, but he didn't shut us down in our proposal.
Mhm.
He asked the kind of questions that made us tighten it up
Yeah.
and make it make sense. And it became for us a real collaboration, right?
Mhm.
And you also was the one. I came up with the idea, but you came up with the name of it, and you check and connect, right?
Mhm.
It was just perfect for what we were trying to do, because that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to check in with these students, but we also needed that connection piece, that relational piece, right?
Mhm.
The relationship piece. And the concept was simple. Teachers volunteer to mentor students and check in with them 2 to 3 times a day, not to police them,
Mhm.
but just to connect, right?
Mhm.
And it was like, how you doing? You good? What do you need? Let's reset. These were some of the questions that were asked of the students, and listening to those response and adjusting, right? And
Mhm.
the concept was simple, you know, and I would say, it wasn't just inside the school walls. Christy, we even had the mentors communicating with the parents, and we collaborated with teachers, so the student wasn't trying to figure out everything alone.
Mhm.
And we saw about an 85% improvement in behavior during the years that we ran it, right? And
Absolutely.
honestly, the number wasn't the best part. The best part was watching students start to believe. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
someone is not giving up on me. And as I
Mhm.
think about that, I think about my first mentee. Woo, girl. a lot of people didn't want to deal with her because she had a reputation, and you know,
Yes, I do.
she gave me in the beginning, she gave me the blues. But she got written up often, and folks had already decided who she was before she even walked in the room. And
Mhm,
once we built a real relationship, consistency and care and accountability, things started to shift.
mhm,
As her grades improved, she didn't suddenly turn into an A student, but she was passing and she was completing work and she was showing up differently, right?
mhm,
And that's when it clicked to me. Behavior didn't change because we had a fancy program, Chrissy.
mhm,
Um, it changed because she had a person.
mhm,
They had people who cared. And if I could do anything differently, I would have started it sooner,
mhm,
and I would have built a way to scale it so more students could have that kind of connection,
mhm.
right? Because
Yeah.
check and connect, it proves something simple. When kids feel seen, they're gonna move differently. Yeah.
Yes. And one thing that I really liked about the program that I really found interesting is that not only were we mentoring the students, but we were mentoring teachers, not just providing professional development
Yes.
for the mentees, but for the teachers who weren't involved. We
Yes.
were able to provide them tools and skills so that they had the alternative to the discipline referral. I think
And
like,
that, go
yeah,
ahead.
I think as a whole, they thought we were going to fix the kid,
Yeah.
but we really fixed the system.
And not only that too, Christy, we were also, we would go in to the teacher's classroom when they couldn't, when they have exhausted all their possibility. We were sitting there and we're finding other ways, because there's different ways to get to the result. We just have to dig deeper, and that's what we did. And funny enough, Christy, that the first year when we started, we didn't get a lot of sign up for volunteers, but the second year we had more teachers wanting to be in on the program, which was good.
Mhm.
So we made an impact.
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. So, through this mentor program or just in general within your career, you've worked closely with teachers and students and families. Where do
Hmm.
you see the biggest disconnect between schools and parents right now?
Hmm. I would say honestly, the biggest disconnect right now is that schools and parents are basically co-parenting,
Mhm.
and half the time we're not even in the same group chat, right? Teachers are like, I've called, I've emailed, I've sent a note, I've used the app, and parents are like, wait, there's an app? Which app? Because I had three school apps and none of them work when I needed them. So, both seriously, but seriously, both sides, they care, they're just tired. Teachers are overloaded, parents are overloaded, and when everyone is running on fumes, communication starts to feel like conflict, you know.
Mhm.
And sometimes what school means as we need support, parent here, oh, you're not doing your job. And when parents mean as I'm trying, school here, oh, you don't care. So everyone gets defensive, and the student is sitting there like, so actually, who's helping me? You
Mhm.
know, um, and that's why I love what we did with Check and Connect. It was a simple fix to a big problem. We built a bridge on purpose, and instead of waiting until something went wrong and then calling home with bad news, we had mentors checking in and students constantly, consistently, and 2 to 3 times a day by choice, right? And
Mhm.
we extending that relationship to families too. Parents weren't only hearing from the school when things blew up. They had a real person who knew their child, who could say, "Hey, I see what's happening. Let's work together." And when you build trust like that, the whole tone shifts. It stops being school versus home, and it starts being we're on the same team
Hmm.
for the
Absolutely.
child.
Hmm. That reciprocal relationship between home and school is so important. And then adding community to it, all three
Yes,
of us working together. And that's another thing with Check and Connect. We had the SRO involved, we had, speakers
yes.
via
Yes.
whatever platform to come and talk to the kids. Like Point Mallard gave us tickets for the kids. Like, the community was involved to show these kids that
Mhm.
they cared and they were rooting for them. And so that is so important. That family, that school, and that community coming together for those babies, it makes the world of difference.
But it starts with the family and the schools first,
Hmm.
because in order to branch out and build even a bigger bridge for the student to be able to cross it, the f-
Hmm.
the school and the home has to be connected on purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what advice would you give parents who feel intimidated? Because that's part of the issue, right? They're feeling a little intimidated when they're going into learning space. We have all these 504s, IEPs, ELs. We have all this language that's foreign. What advice do you give to parents who feel intimidated when speaking up in school spaces?
First I'll tell parents this, you're not alone and you're not wrong for feeling the way that you're feeling.
Mhm.
School buildings can be intimidating, and there's a lot of language, like you said, and a lot of acronyms and a lot of people around the table, and it can feel like everyone else knows the rules except you, right?
Mhm.
But here's the truth, you are the expert on your child, and no one else in that room knows them the way you do. So,
Mhm.
my advice is to start small. You don't have to walk in with a speech or all the right words, a simple, help me to understand, or this is what I'm seeing at home, goes a long way. But it's that communication piece, how we interact and how we speak with each other. I also tell parents, bring a question, not a defense.
Mhm.
Most educators truly want to help, and questions open doors in ways arguments don't.
Mhm.
And, don't be afraid to build relationships early, before there's a problem. That was a big, again, I keep going back, check and connect. That was a big part of why check and connect, worked, when parents already had a trusted point of person,
Mhm.
speaking up didn't feel so scary. And at the end of the day, school works best when parents feel like partners, not visitors,
Mhm.
and at the end of the day, all voices matters, and parents' voice matters, especially when it comes to their child.
Yes, they have to be brave enough because sometimes they're going to be the loudest advocate for their kids, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
unfortunately, schools don't always get it right. We don't, they don't always get it right, and so the parent has to use their voice to advocate for their
Hmm.
babies. So, what would you want educators to remember on the days that they feel like they're failing?
Mm. So, the days when they feel like they're failing or they're draining or whatever, what drains teachers the most right now isn't the teaching, it's everything wrapped around it.
Mm-hmm.
Most teachers, they love the kids. That part usually isn't the problem. Like, I was having a conversation with a teacher earlier this week, and she told me, she was like, "Well, I love my students, but I just don't want to be here. I don't want to be in the classroom. I don't even want to be in the school system. But if I could do anything else with my life, I wouldn't choose. But I'm not saying that I don't love the children. I do, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to be teaching anymore. And that's a sad, that's many teachers are carrying that burden. You
Mhm.
know, there's some teachers who are just in it because they have no other choice, you know. And then, you know, like I said, most teachers, you know, they love the kids. It's just that part isn't usually the problem. It's the constant overload. It's the paperwork, the emails, the meetings about the meetings.
Yes. Yes.
And now you add social media on top of that, you know,
Mhm.
teachers go home exhausted and they open their phones and suddenly they're seeing schools being bashed and educators being blamed and one bad moment turn into a viral headline and the noise is heavy and it's noise. And you know, the hard part is that teachers don't really get to respond. You know,
Mhm.
they just absorb it day after day. And on top of that, they're expected to meet every student needs, academic, emotional, behavioral, with limited time and limited manpower. That combination wears people down, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we don't talk about it openly because teachers worry it will sound like complaining or weakness. And there's this pressure to endlessly self sacrificing as if being tired means you don't care enough. But the truth is, what drains a teacher, what makes them feel like they're failing, is that it's carrying that emotional weight in silence, just like that teacher did. She started out bubbly, and then by by January, she had nothing left in her,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's carrying that weight in silence and doing deeply human work in systems that often talk about educators instead of listening to them, you know.
Mhm.
And that's why we have to change the conversation, you know. When
Mhm.
we create space for honesty and reflection, we protect the people who are still showing up
Mhm.
every day, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So educators end up having to be our own advocates because sometimes the system will push you beyond. I mean, they just think we're forever stretchable, in all these directions, and we do have to advocate for ourselves
Yeah.
in that space. So speak up, um,
Hmm.
and look out for yourselves.
Yes, I
So
agree.
yeah, if you could
Mhm.
speak to the teacher you were in your early in your career, what would you tell her about survival and hope?
Woo. Listen, that question right there is heavy, you know. I'd tell her this, you know, there was a time when someone told you that you weren't a good fit for a position where all you were trying to do was help students and support teachers. And I'd want her to know that moment didn't define her, it refined her.
Yes.
I'd tell her, you know, sometimes not a good fit isn't the full story. It's like trying on an outfit that looks amazing on the hanger, right? But once you put it on, it's too tight in the shoulders or it just don't move with you.
Mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that outfit wasn't made for your shape, right? So, same thing with spaces and roles. Sometimes the environment just isn't built for what you carry, your heart, your standards, your leadership, right? I'd also tell her to pay attention to whose mouth that message is coming from.
Mm,
Evaluate what you bring to the table and what they bring to the table.
girl, you preaching.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes, girl, I've been thinking about this, that that phrase, "You're not a good fit," girl. I'm thinking it's gonna be my next book. You know, you know. Sometimes not a good fit is worth listening to, and sometimes it's just information about the room, not about you.
Absolutely.
So ask yourself, does not a good fit mean I don't belong at the table? Or does it mean I'm dining with the wrong company?
Yes.
Right? Girl, survival. I'll tell her survival comes from knowing that one person's opinion don't get that final word.
Yes.
So don't shrink, don't second guess your calling, keep doing the work, because the very thing one place couldn't handle might be exactly what another place is praying for.
Absolutely.
So I'll tell her, don't try to force yourself into a space that keeps rejecting what you carry.
Hmm.
Sometimes the door isn't locked. You're just meant to walk to the right one, you know. And
Yes.
like I say in the book, I go back to Nehemiah. When they tried to pull him down from the work, he said, I am doing great work
Yes.
and I cannot come down. So that's the mindset. I'm going to tell her, keep building, keep serving, and stay focused, girl. You got this.
Yes, yes. Speaking of the book, so you see how she is preaching here, or you see how she is such a motivation here. I am telling you, you need to purchase this book. Can you please tell them how they can purchase your book?
The easiest place to find the book is through my website at snapacademyal for Alabama.org. And it's also available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And if you love supporting local bookstores, you can find it at selective local shops as well. However you choose to get it, I'm just grateful it's finding its way in the hands of people who need it.
Yes, yes, it's definitely needed. It's definitely needed. Do you have any future projects you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I'm excited about what's ahead. I'm continuing to build out work that supports educators and families beyond the book, through conversations, workshops, and reflective spaces where people can slow down and reconnect with purpose. And I'm doing more community events and book signings this year because I want to actually meet the people reading this book and
Yes.
just hear their stories. I have a book signing this Saturday at Blue Apple Books in Madison, Alabama. And
Awesome.
next week, I'll be at Doing What Matters for Alabama Children, and that's sponsored by the University of Alabama. And I'm also heading to Middle Georgia Lit Fest. So, got a
Okay.
few more things.
Yes.
Yes. Alongside that, I'm just growing the work through Snap Academy, my nonprofit, which helps students and family build strong foundations in reading, writing, and reflection. And my hope is to partner with community leaders, churches, and eventually schools to
Hmm.
help close the reading gap and to support, teachers, new teachers, so they're better prepared for the realities of the real classroom to the message and tools in a lamp to their path. So yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
there's more coming, but it all stays rooted in the same heart, helping people feel seen, supported, and equipped to keep showing up.
Yes, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. I just look at our walk together, you know what I'm saying? It's just amazing. Do you have any burning closing remarks?
I'll keep it simple. Teachers don't let a hard week make you forget who you are.
Yes.
Pause, breathe, and reconnect with your calling. Adjust your lens, shift your perspective, and when the distractions start pulling at you, say what I say, like Nehemiah said, I'm doing great work and I cannot come down. So,
Yes, yes, that's in chapter 1, I know, because when I saw it, I was like, "Yes." Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rollinson, for joining us today. You have been such a blessing to my podcast, and I hope that you will return again very soon.
thank you for having me. I truly enjoy our conversation.
Oh, yes, indeed. Okay, love you, boo. See you later.
Bye.